Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's event. My name is Sujin Kang, and I'm the Senior Events Manager here with the CMX and Bevy team. And welcome once again to today's CMX Community Industry Report AMA. We're so excited to have you all here, and thanks for joining us. We have the next 45 minutes together where we're going to be hearing from our two speakers on a number of key insights from our industry report, and we'll then close our time with a Q&A. And just a few housekeeping remarks here. We're currently on the Bevy event platform, and please be sure to use the chat and introduce yourself if you haven't already. And also please note that this is indeed an AMA, so please be sure to use the Q&A tab as this is an Ask Me Anything session, and so we'll be sure to look at that throughout the event. And also please know that Bevy Virtual works best with Google Chrome. And of course, this session will be recorded and posted onto our CMX YouTube channel for all of us to view afterwards. And lastly, the CMX team is so excited to share that we'll be selecting 3 winners who will receive a free ticket to CMX Summit, taking place this October in Redwood City, California. So this is our annual flagship event where you'll get to meet the top industry leaders such as David Spinks, Amber Atherton, Erica Kuhl, and more. And you'll also have the chance to meet other community builders just like yourself. So winners will be announced after the event, and I'll pin the website link in our chat if you'd like to check out more information on Summit. So with that said, I'm so happy to introduce our host and our first speaker, Jess Hobbs, who is our Director of Community Programming here at CMX. So Jess, go ahead. You can show yourself. Thanks so much for joining and leading today's session, and I'll pass it off to you.
Hi. It's great to be here with you today, and I'm really excited to go over the Community Industry Report. Today, I'm getting over a cold, so bear with me if I'm a little hoarse or maybe have to cough a little bit. But the person that is coming on to share this with me today is actually the woman that's been behind helping us out with the last 4 reports. And I really want to showcase with this report a little bit about the storytelling of like why we ask questions, why we started to investigate things this year, and a little bit about what we're thinking about for future surveys, future data. And so I want to bring on Michelle Linn. This is Michelle Linn, who is the founder of Mantis Research. And the Community Industry Report has been around for 5 years. The first year, David did it all by himself, and I'm still amazed. But then the last, Michelle has been helping us with this. And I just want to say, Michelle is really passionate about doing research and also research around community. And so I feel fortunate she's a partner in this. And I wanted you all to meet such a great person to connect with. And she really believes in the value of the data that we're bringing to our community industry. So with further ado, this is Michelle Linn. I'm going to bring on our slides in a second here. So Michelle, is there anything I missed about you? Anything else to tell us about?
Not at all. So no, great intro, Jess. Thank you so much for the kind words. This is one of my favorite projects I work on every year. I love the team. I love the topic. So yeah, Jess and I are excited, and bring on your questions.
All right. And so this is the Community Industry Trends Report. And I was really excited to actually, for my first in creating this report. I was a CMX member long before I was inside the CMX machine. And I use this report every year to just really validate my thoughts on where I was running needed to go. I validated it with senior leadership, and it's really just wonderful to have this as a tool. And I hope, everybody's excited about what we found out this year and some of the things that we're going to think about for next year. This year, we have some wonderful sponsors. I just want to give a shout out to our 6 great sponsors that helped us create this report this year. We're helping us out in the background. Common Room, Discourse, Microsoft Teams, Better Mode, Khoros, and thank you for your support on our community industry report this year. So let's get into it. Two big words, the words that just came glaring out of this report were contraction and commitment. And they seem like these words shouldn't work together. Like it doesn't seem like these are the things that make sense together, but I love that these were the things that surfaced because they're really meaningful and it really shows us where we can go. What were some of your thoughts on the big findings this year?
Yeah, it was so interesting because, again, we've been doing this for so many years, and you're going to see a lot of these themes come up again as you and I are talking. But it was interesting that we are seeing that for the first time ever, we're seeing that the community industry is shrinking in some respects, like team sizes and things of that nature. But what we saw was that one of the questions we started asking last year was, do you think that how successful is your community at impacting business goals? And last year, 43% said they were very or extremely successful at that. But this year, that number was up to 50% of you. So even though things are getting harder, more of you are having success. So I just think it just speaks to the commitment and the, everything that everyone in this community is doing to do the best possible job that they can.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it. We saw that community teams are shrinking for the first time. We saw, people are doing more. They're not just working community, they're working on other teams. People have fewer moderators and organizations seem less likely to increase their investment. But it was that key, commitment, I don't know. That's my shining light. I am a community person. I'm dedicated to it. I'm not going to go from it. And I just love that those two words were what surfaced for us. And I'm excited about what this year holds for us as a community industry. And just a little bit about our method. Based on responses of 425 people. And these people completed the online survey between January and February of this year. And this is kind of the demographics. These have been pretty standard. These haven't changed too much year. It's where people come from, the number of employees they have at their companies, or if they're a consultant. The industries that they're working in, the communities, the type of focus that they have. And then we're both going to go over the sort of key community industry trends that we saw. These are the key things out. And you'll notice that we kind of used a little hashtag at the top to notate these, and you'll see throughout our presentation today when we see those specific things come up in the data. And so the uncertainty, community professionals are a little bit uncertain with what's been happening in our industry. 44% believe their organization will be increasing investment, but that's also down from last year. That was 62%. And 59% of us, this is a lot. And this really shows how that control, we're collectively experiencing this. That's 59% of us are concerned about losing our jobs. And I think that's important to share and understand. And you want to tell us about this next one?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I feel like we're starting off with all of the negative, but it's going to get much more positive. But like we alluded to, what we're seeing for the first time ever, every other year it was a story of growth, bigger teams, and so forth. But for the first time ever, we're seeing that these community teams are actually shrinking. Teams are getting smaller. You're being asked to do more. And we're also finding that some of the things that were actually led by your communities are actually coming in-house. So this was a huge trend that we're seeing. Just you're asked to do, I hate the term more with less, but you're asked to do more with less.
Yeah. Yeah. And then our next one, this, they're not all negative. Impactful. Really, communities we're still positive effect on business, despite the economy we're all experiencing. Half of us still consider that our communities are very successful at impacting business goals, and that's up from last year. So we still understand and know the value that we're bringing to business. And I also want to say that leads us to, like, how can we showcase that better?
For this next trend, we're going to talk about technology, and we started collecting data about technology a couple years ago. But one of the things that, I know that Jess was really interested in was really understanding how many tools are in is everyone's tech stack. Are we using all of these tools, and are they working together, and so forth. So for the first time, we counted how many tools were in people's tech stack, and a third of you have at least five tools. And we're also finding that these tools, tools are working, but they're not working well enough. You don't have exactly the right tools in place. So for instance, you guys have 42% of you have a CRM, but it doesn't actually connect with your customer and your community data. So again, we're making good strides, but we're not there yet.
Oh, the tech stack. Such a pain
stack.
point. And then, hybrid. We really wanted to kind of connect with hybrid, and it's here to stay. We understood what a powerful tool it became for all of us during the pandemic. And I think so many communities really see it as a powerful way to connect globally in ways that you can't with in-person. In-person is still, where we love to go. I mean, I'm so looking forward to the summit. We're like deep in the planning mode for summit. And I love it because I'm going to see so many people one-on-one. And we can't replace that, but, virtual and hybrid are not going away.
And then lastly, this is a new area that we dug into this particular year. And something that we, like Jess said, we want to do even more of this in coming years, but we wanted to learn more about you, the actual professional doing this work. So, what we asked, one of the questions we asked was, do you plan to stay in this industry? And we had 2/3 of you who said you do. Many more were uncertain. But a lot of people are very bullish about this industry. And we also started to dig into, as you're going to see, what's actually where you're satisfied and where you want the most help. But it's a really positive message. Many people in this industry are here and they want to stay here.
Yeah. I'm a community person. Yeah. I'm a community person. I've been doing it for years. I'm not going to leave anytime soon. And then what we want to do is talk about the sections of the report. And the first one was the community professional. And, a lot of these questions we've asked before, but we definitely went into new territory this year. And so the profile of the community professional, I'm a full-time employee. I spend 100% of my time on community building. That's 62% of you. So still a majority of us are doing that. But what were some of the changes that you really saw happening this year, Michelle?
From the actual profile of who we surveyed?
Yeah.
So they're coming up in future slides, but this is a really similar mix to what we have seen in the past. We have about 2/3 of people who are working full-time on community. And even when we always track years of experience, each year we're always seeing we have more and more people becoming more experienced as a community professional, which only makes sense. But obviously there's a lot of new people in the industry as well. 29% of you have fewer than 2 years of experience. So it's a great mix of a sample of those who are up and coming, as well as those who've been doing it for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, what option best describes your level? Manager, community manager really came out ahead. And then what is the best title that aligns with how you view yourself? 68% community builder, community professional.
Just as a really quick note on that. Oh, Jess. So I thought it was interesting. The year before last, we actually did a writing question. We wanted to see what people's titles were. And community professional came out on top, which is zero surprise. But it was interesting to see all of the other titles that people use. So this year we were trying to get a more quantitative view of that, and we still had 11% of people who said others. So there's a lot of people who use growth strategists and engagement in their titles. So it's been fascinating to see, what people actually call themselves.
Yeah, there was actually a conversation last week in our Facebook group just about that. Whose title is community growth specialist? Where are people saying that? And there was actually an interesting comment that in France, it's been community growth specialist, and the translation's actually a little bit different. And so I just thought that was interesting. It's just okay, a little bit more international, other language view of it is people, does it translate the same? So that's another question for next year. And then profile of a community professional, how do you identify? 69% female, 2% non-binary, and 29% male. Ethnicity, people who identify as white at 69%, and then Hispanic or Latino, Latina, Latinx coming in second at 11%, Black or African descent at 6%. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's just interesting to kind of see how our makeup changes, stays the same year to year.
This hasn't shifted much year to year.
Yeah. And then what country do you live in? I want to give a special shout out to Juan and everybody from Colombia. I know you guys put a special effort to really all do the survey, and it showed Colombia came in at 3% here. And it's interesting to see where we're growing again and changing here. But, USA is 57% of the respondents right now. And then this is kind of going into what do we do besides what else do we do? And most of us are doing marketing tasks. But then again, the category right below is other. So what else are we doing besides community tasks? And that's I'm curious to investigate that farther as well. And then what is your role in community building strategy and engaging directly with community, focus on operations and processes coming right at the top.
And that was a new question that we asked this year because we really wanted to get a sense of what our what does this actually mean when you are a community professional? So we're hoping that questions like this really help provide some insight into what this job actually is and what that makeup looks like.
Yeah. I'm excited with some of the new questions like that we brought to it and what they're, kind of indicators they're showing us of where else we can investigate. And then, our salary data, you can see it's interesting, it's everything is going up. I don't know percentage wise year over year, if there was as much of a percentage jump this year. One of the things, do you want to share what we saw in the data that we didn't share in the report? Because we just didn't think we had enough substantial data yet.
Yeah, we didn't have enough. So we're always looking for the segments where we have a big enough sample size to share. And we just started collecting this data in 2022. So this is our second year. So it's going to be really interesting to trend this over time. But one of the things that we saw this year, which was surprising, and like Jess said, we didn't put in the report, was that community professionals who work within a marketing department were paid more than others who worked as part of an actual dedicated community department or team. I don't know why that is. We need to dig into that more. There's so many, obviously with salary, there's so many factors. It's just not that thing. It's your role, years of experience, it's your location and so forth. But that was just one notable thing that jumped out at us when we were analyzing this year's data.
Yeah, interesting stuff to dig deeper into. And then, we talked about like what's important about your job, what, satisfies you. And yes, salary is important, but I just love that like having an impact is really important. Leadership that trusts me to do my job, flexible work schedule. So it's like, getting paid well and being able to live is important, but it's not the only thing that really draws us to this type of work. And I love that this really shows up in the data. And then this is where we're sort of digging into new territory this year, since we wanted to acknowledge and pay attention to the layoff and things that are happening here. And 12% of community professionals have been laid off in the last 2 years. Now, it'd be interesting to compare that data like overall with other industries, but this is having a significant impact on the work we do and our colleagues and the people we care about that we're doing this work together. And also, like we asked, do you think you'll still be a community professional in the next 2 years? And, I love this. This is the commitment. I plan to stay in community. 67% of us are like, yes, I'm going to be here. Do you want to share the quote? I love this quote.
So one of the things we did this year is we asked this question. It was a write-in open-ended question. What do you love about being a community professional? And there are additional quotes in the report. I know you guys can do a lot more with this data because there's so much that people love, but here's one that really struck us. I really love helping folks and creating a space that is diverse, inclusive, and friendly. Also, being a community professional is rewarding creatively. There are lots of different things you can do and lots of interesting problem solving involved. I love taking feedback from the community and trying to use it to improve our platform and all the things we offer. And there was a lot of positive, this is just one quick example, but there was so many positive things about why people loved being here and in this industry.
Yeah. I love giving space in the survey for people to, if they feel like it, to be able to express themselves and kind of tell the story more of what community work is like. All right. Community operations and programs, kind of digging into the nuts and bolts of what we do.
So this is something that we've done a long time, since David started this report. He was always really interesting on how our communities working with inside of organizations. So these are questions we've asked every single year. Approximately how long has your organization's community existed? 13% of people say that it's been less than 1 year. We see this every single year. There are always new community builders in this survey, new communities being built. And then almost half of you have had a community for more than 5 years. So again, we see this huge range of those who are experienced and those who are new to the field. This other question, what option best describes the stage of your community program? Every year we see about 25% said they are building new. So again, there's always these new communities coming into the space. And every year we see that the most common stage of growth is scaling. So people, even though we all have all of these new communities coming in, we have a lot of people who are trying to build and be better. Just one quick note, we added maintaining an existing community as an option this year because as much as people are building and growing, there's a lot of you, 17%, who are maintaining and doing the work that they just need to do, which is great to hear too.
Yeah.
This is another question we ask every single year, and we always look at the other, and we always change this list based on feedback that we get from survey participants. The one new entry we added this year was partners, and we see that 42% of people, so they have partners who participate in their communities. This data is pretty consistent year over year. Customers and employees always top this list. Although we did see employees even grow a little bit more than normal. So I think it's just interesting to see. This could be another place that we could really dig into. What do these employee communities look like?
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be interesting to ask some more questions around that.
So this, I know this is a table and it's hard to like make sense of it from first blush, but here's what this table is unfortunately telling us. We have been tracking, for a long time, how many people are working full time on the community team. And as you can see, the line that says one, that we have one person on our team. This was going down every single year, except this year it popped up and it's the highest ever. So 1/3 of our communities have just one person on their team. So we're seeing more teams that have just one person. And on the back end, we're seeing fewer teams that have 6 or more people working on their team. So this is a really clear sign that the community teams are shrinking in size.
Yeah.
Here we asked, what department is your community team part of? As we saw last year, we've seen this, several years. Community is most commonly part of marketing. Second to that is being its own dedicated community team. This year, I don't know why, but we saw a little bit of an increase in those who say their community is part of marketing, and a decrease in those who said they have a dedicated community team. So I'm not sure if this is a year-over-year blip, or if this is some interesting trend that we're going to be tracking over time. But it has been really interesting just to see how this always evolves every year.
Yeah.
This was another interesting question. So last year we started asking the question, what type of work is your community team doing? Do you have a full-time person doing this? Do you have a part-time person doing this? Or is nobody doing this in your organization? And these are things like engaging directly with the community, focusing on operations, developing education and training, and so forth. And what we found, this is the second year we asked this question, is that in almost every case, we are seeing that there's fewer people who have a dedicated person, a full-time person, to do every single one of these activities. So it makes sense in the context of, this data we just looked at about community teams shrinking, but you can also see in every single specific role that these roles are actually, that people are asked to be doing more. The only small difference is this last one, running chapter-based event programs. We actually saw fewer organizations doing this in total, but even though they haven't had a year-over-year percentage change for full-time people. But again, the big point of this is everyone is being asked to do more. Yep. And I wish it was different, but I mean, again, it's where we are, and we always want to be transparent. Next, we asked, what are your top frustrations about managing your community and its activities? And every year since we've been doing this, we've had the same top 3 frustrations. It's difficult to consistently engage members. It's hard to quantify the value of the community, and your efforts are largely manual. On a positive note, each year, these percentages of people who are frustrated by these things are getting smaller and smaller. So even though these are the main frustrations, it's not as pronounced as it once was. Yeah.
And it's also an indicator of like where we as community professionals really should put our efforts, is like in that quantification problem, like that ROI. I always feel like I roll my eyes at that. Is like, it's complicated and it's hard.
Really complicated. Yeah. And for what it's worth, I know, Jess, you're going to read us a quote in a second, but again, our top challenge every single year is it's difficult to consistently engage members. And so one of the questions we ask, because we really want this survey to be useful and helpful to use, we asked, okay, what are your tips for actually engaging your community? So Jess, I mean, you have a good tip to read.
And we had so many great tips, and also in the report, there's more. And I'd love to also tabulate all of them and have them available. But this was just a really nice, concise one. Be consistent. It takes time to build momentum and to build trust and familiarity. Don't keep trying and scrapping new things. Have a well thought out strategy and keep at it. That doesn't mean not to adjust when something isn't working, but you have to make incremental adjustments. And when something is working, lean into it and keep going. And this is, this is also where I see the tension. This is a great tip, but this is the tension between leadership is like, where's the results? Where's the results? And it's like communities work at the speed of human trust. And it's like, how can we better quantify that for our leadership? And so now we're going into some of the things around automating community. These are some of the questions we asked this year that were new. We wanted to kind of find out who's using automation and aggregation tools, and what is valuable, and also sometimes frustrating, like other is the top one. So we aren't actually finding the one that people are using, because I don't think there is. We're spread all over the place in these kind of tools. They're valuable, but there isn't one that does everything for us. And so, other is the top one. And with that other category, we did get some responses, Waves, Airtables, Salesforce, Zapier, Higher Logic, HubSpot, Google Spreadsheets. I've got spreadsheets. I track on spreadsheets too, and then the next response was a custom in-house. So what does that look like? And then we get Common Room, Orbit, Dots Community, Talkbase, Commissar, Threado, Grazi, Ahoy Connect. Like those are some of the tools we're using, but there's nothing that's doing it all for us. And then here's the tech stack. 30% of us are using 5 or more tools. 5 or more tools is, it's hard to manage a community if you're trying to manage things that don't connect, that are on 5 different things, and you're trying to make good quantifiable sense of them. And how do we shift this? How do we help each other kind of shift to a shorter tech stack, something that's more integrated? Does your community data connect to your CRM? 42% have a CRM, but it doesn't connect to community data. 23% don't have a CRM. 35% have a CRM that connects to community data. That's actually a pretty small number, and I think is sadly one of the missing gaps of where community can do really good work for our organizations and businesses.
And unfortunately, Jess, we're seeing more people say that they have a CRM, but they're not connecting it to community data. So the tool's even there, it's just not working the way that it could or it should.
Yeah. And then community operations and programs. What types of programs does your community host or offer? Forums and message boards, live events, conferences and other events, chat. And what the newer thing that we asked this year was around self-based learning courses or cohort-based learning. And that was 30% of you actually have something that's happening like that, which I really like to see. Is like that's an interesting part of community that I don't always see us exploring or bringing into community. Like, how does it integrate better?
And if there are other types of programs you want us to, everyone out there wants us to start looking into, like, let us know. We love to track, all of these different things and these new ways that people are actually building community and what they're hosting.
Yeah. Always you can send me, like, if you don't want to post it in the community, send me a direct message. I love to know this data, because then I can collect it and the survey gets better year after year with that.
So we're going to look at forums first, and then we're going to look at events. So those people who are using online forums and message boards, one of the key trends that we saw, we asked, how do you manage your online forums and message boards? last year, 38% said they were doing them in-house. This year, 61%. So again, I keep harping on that you guys are doing more with less, but not only your team's getting smaller, but your message boards are being moved in-house, which is that was one of the biggest shifts that we actually saw year over year.
Yeah, that was a big jump this year.
On a similar note, we always ask about how many moderators people have for their forums and message boards. And as you can see this year, about a third of you say that you only have one moderator. Last year, it was 26%. So again, and the rest of the data is relatively consistent across the time. But again, more of you are working with just one person. So the work is just becoming increasingly difficult. This is interesting data. We've been tracking this since 2021, as you can see, but we ask people which platforms that they're using to host their forums and message boards. And what we are seeing is that we're seeing growth in Discord. We are seeing growth in, Discord is the one that we're seeing the most growth. But on the other hand, we are seeing declines in people who are using Facebook groups. We are seeing declines in people who are using, custom built in-house solutions, and we're seeing declines in people who use Salesforce and Twitter communities. So it's been really interesting to see, which platforms people are using across all years. Slack, besides 2021, Slack has been the #1 platform everyone is using. And then what's interesting on the next slide, we're going to talk about how satisfied people are. So even though not that many people are using Discourse, this is the platform where the highest percentage of users said that they are very satisfied. Discord, again, that one's growing. You can definitely see people are satisfied with that platform too. I'm just going to call out Slack, which most people use. 63% of you guys are feeling very, it's very meh. You guys are somewhat satisfied. So even though Slack is the most popular, it's not working the best.
All right, and then these are the questions around events and community. And we asked, what type of events did you host for your community? 90% hosted virtual, 59% in person, and then 34% were hybrid. But what I liked is we talked about, like, where do you see where do you see the value in it? And like for business impact, in-person events definitely went out. But better for the community are virtual events because they're more accessible by more people in more places. Like better for one-on-one connection, in person. And again, but then kind of going with better for community, better for diverse audiences, it's definitely virtual events.
One really quick note on this too, Jess. What we saw year over year is an increase in those using hybrid events, an increase in those using in-person events, zero surprise. But virtual event was 90% last year and it was 90% this year. So even though people are using more in person and hybrid, they're not using less virtual. It's just become part of the programming.
Yeah. And then what's the primary platform you're using to host these events? I mean, Zoom is definitely the one that's increasing, but it's interesting to see that like there's still 25% are on another platform. And people are using Eventbrite, but is that like where you're hosting the RSVP? Where do you actually host the virtual event? And it's just interesting to see what's increased here, what's decreased here. And, it'd be interesting, also to see which one of these we were the most satisfied with as well. And here we go. So similar to the platform we did, like, which ones we're the most satisfied with. And, it's interesting that, Zoom, we're more or less, 41% of us fairly satisfied, but 55% of us are like, it's it's okay. And then to look at some of the other categories, Bevy, kind of a similar, like people are fairly satisfied with it, but you know, then there's Google Hangouts, like how many, where are we hosting, you know, what are we hosting on Google Hangouts? Is that working better? You know, I don't know. It'd be interesting to start like really diving into these platforms. And then what best describes how you manage your events? And we can kind of see here a similar thing with the moderation is a lot of these are now coming in-house where we might have been contracting or using a service to host them elsewhere. These are all coming in-house again. And then like which teams are responsible for managing your events. You know, there's a huge increase in like community is managing these events, increased like what, 25%. And, you know, it's interesting to see where these events are being, who's responsible for them now.
And then another quick note on this too, Jess, it's interesting. Every single team is every single group, there has been an increase. So as we saw on the slide, you know, everyone is still doing 90% still doing virtual, but we're doing more in person, more hybrid. So there's just more. So I think this is just getting spread out across all of these different teams.
Yeah.
But it'd be really interesting to see which of these teams did in person versus hybrid versus virtual and how that looked.
Yeah. And then like how long has your community had community-led events? It's interesting to see the spread here, like fewer than 6 months, people are still definitely kind of jumping on and bringing these into their communities. But then, you know, there's those that are like, we've had these for 5 to 9 years. Like, what have you learned? How have you adapted in this new landscape? And then like, you know, do you plan on launching a community-led event program in 2023? 28% yes, 38% no. And then we're still kind of unsure. Like, it seems like this one's a little like spread out between all of those. It'll be interesting to see kind of results next year. Does this change?
So this is another question we've asked year over year. We really want to understand how people say that their community is contributing to the business. We added a new option this year based on a feedback again we received from you, which was submitting suggestions for product. 62% of people say that that's how their community members are helping their business. Besides that one, we're seeing a really similar mix to what we've seen every single year. The top reasons are sharing product feedback and evangelizing or making referrals to products. But it's interesting to track all of this over time to see what's changing. One other quick note, the one thing that decreased was that fewer communities are asking their members to write articles and contribute content. So I thought that was, I'd be curious if that's like a 1-year blip or if that's a trend we're going to see year over year.
Well, we'll see that next year. Yeah. And then the last thing, this, I have to be honest, kind of concerns me. And I want to ask all of us as community professionals to kind of consider how we can turn this trend around. Do you have specific goals related to diversity, equity, inclusion for your community? And this has been trending down in the yes category. And I'm sad about that. I really am. And how can we shift this? Like, what other learning programs can we as CMX offer? What workshops can we offer? What conversations can we host? Because I don't want this to slip anymore. This has been a trending thing. And I want us all collectively to think about how we can shift this. And I do want to be mindful. We are kind of at the 45-minute mark. I don't want to race through this part, but let's get through this so we can get some questions in. There's just so much to talk about. And I love talking to Michelle about this. So we really want to talk about like the business value of community. And, I have to admit, we tried to get in more questions here, but the survey just became long, astronomically long. And so we had to cut some things. But what that's indicating, and what Michelle and I have been talking about, is what other surveys or research can we do around this? Because maybe this needs to become its own survey. Maybe we need to talk about this differently. And, maybe what that's saying to us is the community industry report needs to have, needs to differentiate itself into distinct parts that we do throughout the year. Now, this is just us kind of imagining this, but this is where this is leading me to think. And, because 82% of us think that community is critical to our company's mission. And, we see the value in it. And so how can we as CMX bring more of those insights out that then you can bring to your leadership? I would love to see how we can do that. So I'm going to kind of jam through these. 50% of you report your community being very successful. And this is the positive stuff. We're still being so impactful with what we do.
One super quick note on this, Jess, there's a list of different things that those who are very successful and extremely successful are doing in the report. So if you're interested in what those, what the correlation is, it's not causation, but what those things are, check out the report.
And then this is something you have been tracking with David over time.
Yeah, this is David's model. The spaces model used to be space, then it became spaces. And again, you can look at this data in more detail in the report, but we've always been tracking what the top objective for community is and to see how that actually changes over time. Acquisition came up in the list this year, which makes sense because people are trying to use community to acquire new people because times are tougher. We can definitely dig into this more, but I think that's the key takeaway from here.
Yeah. And this is something that's in the report, and I would love people to deep dive a little bit. This is just like the top metrics. It's going deeper into that spaces model. And this is a great chart for you as a community professional to kind of take your community and go like, am I kind of on track with what others are doing as well? And then health of your community. Like, what are the top metrics, that we're all tracking? So number of active members is up there, total members, number of new members, number of posts. These are kind of ranked in how important or what you use to track. Have these changed much over time?
So all we are seeing this year over year, is a decrease in certain metrics. So we're seeing few people track number of posts, number of content pieces, which makes sense because there's fewer people writing, number of events, and web traffic to the community. So all of those were down. Otherwise, it's pretty similar year over year.
Yeah. And then how often do you send a health community survey? This is another thing where I want to kind of go, hey, us, community industry, let's try to do better on this because we don't send a community health survey. And hey, CMX needs to do it too. 39% of us don't. And I think we need to start understanding this better about our communities.
And those who are more successful send community health surveys, just quick heads up.
And then, this is significant too, the financial value of community. Only a small percentage, 12% of us can actually say the financial value of our community. That's still really small. We're still trying to figure it out. But I want to ask questions here. Does how we're tracking ROI currently really reflect it? Like, are there things like surprise and delight that we can try to figure out and quantify, like consistency, rituals, other things that are happening in our communities that we can figure out how to showcase to leadership to really show the value of what's going on in our communities. All right. So this is kind of me at the end of the report. this is what I, in my what can we do with this report? What can we do with this data? The two big words, contraction and commitment. Where are they leading us? And I really think that they're leading us towards kind of reconnecting, recommitting, kind of coming back to a center node. I don't know what that looks like other than using the word node, but like, how can we come together this year to really create sort of documents that we all work from? And what I want to say is I already see this happening. There's some wonderful people in our community that are already asking us to come together and create common definitions, create common curriculum. Like there's a lot of us that are out there going like on this trend, going like, I see it, we're in the same zeitgeist, we have our toes in the same river. And that's what I really wanted to see happen this year, is this idea that we can come together, that we can co-create some of these documents, and shift some of the things in our data that we don't like the trend. Come together to tell a better story about ROI. Those are, I'm excited to see where we go. This report was really interesting for me to do with Michelle, and I loved some of the insights that I was not expecting, and I love some of the questions we were able to ask. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that's perfect. I mean, I'm really interested in people. If people have questions, I'm really interested if they have feedback for next year. I mean, always interested in that. Like, where can we dig in more? Would love feedback.
All right. I think we can open it for Q&A.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michelle and Jess, for running through the key findings. Before we head into Q&A, I just want to mention that we have Samantha Logan in the chat, and she's hosting an after event discussion. So I posted the link in the chat just so that you have that. But let me go ahead and take a look in our Q&A tab, and I'm just going to go by the most up-liked question here. All right, so Vinny is asking, some senior leadership members struggle to understand measurements for success with new and developing communities and question the value. What metrics or resources would you recommend to help measure? And sometimes standard metrics of engagement don't paint a full picture of growth or success.
I feel like I'm still asking this question.
It's so real.
Do you have initial thoughts on that, Michelle?
I mean, my initial thought, and you're much deeper into this than I am, is to figure out what objective are you driving towards, and looking at the objectives that people use to measure that specific objective. What the report doesn't do, but we could certainly do in future years, is look at which metrics, like those who are new to community are using versus those who are, more sophisticated. But that doesn't really answer the questions. Those are just some data points to consider. What do you think, Jess?
I mean, it's almost, I would rather, head people towards communities you think are running well and how they're achieving their data. Because it's hard as you're a new person kind of getting out there and like, what are the data points you really need? I mean, I think Richard Millington always lays that out very well, because when you're building a community, it's like new membership, but it might also be like, it's the small things, like maybe somebody does a little emoji. It's the little things, because community needs to build that trust. And it doesn't happen overnight. It needs, we need to watch those small incremental changes, like the emoji that people are doing. Like, when are people consistently logging on? Are people consistently logging on? And like, how much are they logging on for? Looking at some of those, because people are shy. They don't always want to jump in and react right away. They don't even know what to do yet. So you need to help lead them on like how to involve themselves in the community.
All right, thank you, ladies. Our next question is from Lisa, who says, I like your quote, community works at the speed of trust. What is a longer way to say that to our boss who asks us, where are the results? How do we convince them to embrace your quote?
I mean, I also would love to see the community industry dig a bit deeper into social sciences. You know, Venya, I think we're speaking, we're on the same track here. We're speaking the same language, because social sciences will give a lot of the data and understanding of how people work. Because that's what we're trying to navigate within a business structure, is how does the human being actually work? Like, how do they like to talk to each other? How do they like to meet each other? Is somebody more of an introvert or an extrovert? Meaning, like, how do they recharge? Do they like to put themselves forward, or do they like to hang back and kind of see what happens and then insert themselves into something? It's like, we need to be able to quantify how a human works and then extrapolate that into like communities work at the speed of trust. You know, it's like, I still, you know, do not like Field of Dreams, the movie, for like, you build it, they will come, because I feel like leadership has embraced that idea. And, you know, they need to embrace the idea of building communities at the speed of trust. And we'll work on that, though. You know, those are the ideas I want to dig in deeper to, because like, how can we present that in a very understandable, easy to digest way to leadership?
And as a quick note to that too, I mean, make sure that you are doing your health surveys, and make sure that you are asking questions that can get at that. And you can take our user said XYZ that can help translate that quote for your specific use case.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. I think the stat about the lack of diversity was the most surprising, and for everyone here. And so Christiana is asking, any thoughts or comments about the lack of diversity amongst community professionals?
The lack of diversity, or the lack of diversity kind of focused work?
It could be, why don't we go both ways? I think we can definitely go both ways, because there were a few people in the chat who shared their personal story about saying, I don't see other people like myself in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take it both ways. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's upon us to do the work. Like, diversity work is an actionable process. Like, it's active. So I think so much of it is like, oh, we can make a diversity statement and then we're fine. But it's actually like looking at your membership and going like, who's here and who's not here, and like who feels permission to be here, and who hasn't been sort of like, you know, given permission, not given permission, but like shown the pathway to permission. Like, some people just like, they don't see themselves, so it's not the space for them. And you actually have to like actively reach out and go like, I would like to create a better place for you here. And I see value in having you here, both for you and for the community. What are things that are barriers to entry? You know, maybe there's even the, you know, little things like the pictures you're using to showcase your community. Are you showcasing enough diversity in those? So somebody's like, oh, I see people like me. And it's an active force, you know, it's an active thing that you're doing. And it's not upon those who are missing to do the action. It's upon those who are there to notice who's missing and actively reach out.
And I can't remember if it was this year. I know it was last year, but we might have asked the same question this year as well. I would need to look, but we have write-ins for the question, how do you help underrepresented people in your community? So that's another place that we could mine for other ideas too.
Awesome. All right. I think we could probably take one more question here. Let's take a look. Tanya's asking, I'd like to know how other stakeholders outside of the community view the value of community. Any upfront thoughts right there for that one?
Now, I would love to do an entirely different survey. That's a whole different
Yeah.
audience. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I love the question.
Yeah, I love the question too. And I think that is research that we need to understand is like, is it mysterious? Is it like, I don't quite know what the community is. I think it's cool. I mean,
it's definitely a niche
Yeah.
industry, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, what I think we need to look at is ways to do community or company-wide community fostering. I mean, that's what I did at a previous community is, I mean, I actually wrote like how-to manuals for every department there. I'm like, these are the things that are of value that you can bring to the community. And then, you know, I was lucky enough that at that company, we had like a bonus thing. I could attach that to bonuses. You know, I had a like, you know, a one up there. Like I had some ability to do that, but you know, you could gamify it. Like who's the team that does the most connection in the community? And I think it's like when you get the departments out of their silos and when you get them into the community, it becomes less mysterious. And then if you get the product team in there and you go, product team, these are the value, these are like the example statements you can make in the community and the example things you can share. And you just like make a bullet list for them. That's what I did. They get to see like a customer go like, I love that you added this tool. I asked for it. I'm so happy you know, like you make my life easier because you added this tool. And once we get like, we have to bring, again, it's like an active force. We have to bring these departments in and it's frustrating, but that's the way that these others, you know, spaces in our organizations or businesses are going to see the value of community.
Awesome. Jess, Michelle, this time was super insightful, and for everyone tuning in today from literally all over the globe, thank you so much for joining us. Jess and Michelle, is there any final words that you want to share with those tuning in or watching the recording afterwards? Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to take this survey. This is such valuable information. Like I thought it was valuable when I was at previous companies, and I hope it's valuable again for you this year. I hope it was valuable to also meet Michelle, the person that helps us, and just understand that she cares just as much as we do about this industry. And yeah, I just want to thank you for your presence. I want to thank you for your questions. And I want to thank you for all the energy that you put into, you know, our community professionalism and our community industry. Because it's been hard this year, but I just love that we're overall just so committed to the value and the beauty of the work that we do.
Anything from you, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to Jess. Just thank you for everyone for attending. Thank you, everyone, for taking the survey. I know we've said this before, but we do this for you. So if you have questions or suggestions or feedback, please pass them along. We would love to make this as relentlessly helpful for you as possible. That's the mission every single year. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Amazing. Well, just as we close, I just pinned our message with the link to Samantha Logan's link, as she'll be hosting an after-event discussion on her Discord. And this recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, and we will also be announcing the 3 winners of the CMX Summit tickets. So please stay tuned for that. But thank you once again. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. See you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.